Hi, sixth graders. How are you? For those who don't know me, my name is Miss Ania. I'm P63's teacher. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are at home. This is the third week. So I hope you guys have found the best way to pass time, which is not in video games. Well, today's class is going to be about reported speech, but in questions. Last time you saw reported speech with Miss Yamilia. Today, the difference is what do we do when it's a question, okay? So, this is my super board. Don't make fun of me. This is what I have, okay? So, what happens when we have a question, okay? When someone else is making a question. Now, let's remember, we use reported speech when we're gonna say something someone else said, okay? So, my imaginary friend is saying something and I want to say what he just said, okay? So I'm going to repeat what he said, but now with reported speech. Now, if I just repeat his question, it would be something like this. Luis asked, my imaginary friend is Luis, okay? Luis, he asked, why is your hair wet? Question mark. He's the one asking, okay? Now, I'm going to say what Luis asked. Okay, so it's gonna sound something like Luis asked Clara why her hair was wet. Okay, so rule number 1. Every time we have a question and we're gonna change it to reported speech, it's not gonna end in a question mark. We're gonna end with the period because now it's not gonna be a question. So every time you change a question to reported speech, you're going to end with a period. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, now the next one is just like the statements. When the tense is in present, and we're gonna say it again in reported speech, we're gonna change the verb to past. Now, Miss Jamilia, in her class, she put on the board like a box where it says, where it's telling you specifically if it's in present, you change it to past. If it's in past, if it's in present perfect, you're going to change it to past perfect. And it tells you if it's in present continuous, you change it to past continuous. And it gives you everything the way you need. Okay, so that's the other one. From present, we change it to past. The form changes. What does this mean? Every time I change a question to reported speech, the order in what I'm gonna say it's gonna be different. Okay? Now, I'm gonna make an example with the verb to be and the subject. Okay? Now the question would be, what can we do tomorrow? That's the question. What can we do tomorrow? Now, here where it says a verb to be, it can be another auxiliary verb like can, may, will, okay? Now, what I want you to focus on right now is that the form changes to the different place, okay? So, in the question, what can we do tomorrow? We're going to change it to, he asked what we could do tomorrow, okay? Now, what it's changing, the auxiliary verb, we're changing it all the way to the end, and we're changing the subject all the way to the beginning, okay? So the subject at the beginning, it says, what can we? First the auxiliary verb, then the subject, okay? First the auxiliary verb, then the subject. Now, when I change it to reported speech, he asked what we could do. Now, when we change it to reported speech, first is the subject. He asked what we is the subject. We. What we. And can changes to the past. Okay, so can in past we say could. We could do. Now, the word do is like the action verb, so that's why it stays in the same spot. Now, pretty much this rule applies to all the time, to all the questions. Here's another example. My imaginary friend is Luis, and he's asking Clara, can you tell me the answer? Now, I'm gonna say what Luis just asked my friend. Luis asked Clara if she could tell him the answer. If she could tell him the answer. Now, everything that I'm telling you right now, that the form changes, that the verb to be changes with the subject, they change places. Pretty much you just swipe it around, okay? You just flip it around. It's vice versa, okay? So if in the question you have first the verb to be and then the subject, now on the reported speech, first is going to be the subject and then the verb to be. And if you're my students, I always tell you that when you make a question, you always have to start with the auxiliary verb. With the auxiliary verb, with the modal verb. Can I go to wash my feet? May I go to the restroom? Can I sit here? May I sit here? I always tell you, every time you make a question, the verb to be or the auxiliary verb is going to be at the beginning. So if you notice, when you make a question, the auxiliary verb is at the beginning. So when we do reported speech, it's not going to be a question anymore. So the subject and the auxiliary verb have to switch, okay? Because it's not a question anymore. So the auxiliary verb goes back to the middle of the sentence. And you start with the subject. Like you always do a normal sentence. You start with the subject and you continue, okay? So just remember, when it's a question, the auxiliary verb goes at the beginning and then the subject. Now, when we're going to do reported speech, it's no longer a question mark. Because it's no longer a question mark, you cannot start with the auxiliary verb or with the verb. So you start with the subject. Okay? So that's it for today. That was a class about reported speech, but with questions. If you need to watch this video again, you can go ahead and do. Don't forget to answer the questions in Moodle. Good luck.